I'm Jessica, and I'm 28 years old. It's better if you don't come to Disney with us. Stay home and take care of your dogs." At the airport, what the airline attendant told them left them furious. Then I posted a selfie in the Disney Hotel Presidential Suite with my dogs. My sister-in-law Madison said this while cutting her steak at what was supposed to be a supportive family dinner. 3 weeks after my divorce was finalized. 3 weeks after I'd paid $8,000 for their family Disney vacation because my brother Brian convinced me it would help me, and focus on happier things. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been manipulated by family during your weakest moment. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. The dining room went silent. Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Brian shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting his wife to be quite so blunt about their change of plans. "Madison," Brian started weakly, but she held up her hand. "No, I think this is for the best. Jessica needs time to process her divorce, not be around a happy family vacation. It might be too painful for her. Too painful." She was kicking me off the trip I'd funded and calling it compassion. 3 months ago, I'd been married to David, planning our own future family vacations. 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. Then I discovered his affair with his secretary, endured a messy divorce, and found myself back in my childhood bedroom at 28, crying myself to sleep every night. That's when Brian had appeared with his brilliant idea. "Jess, you need something to look forward to," he'd said during one of my darker moments. "Something positive and magical. What if we all went to Disney World together? You, me, Madison, the kids. It could be exactly what you need to start healing." I'd been so grateful that someone cared about my emotional recovery. So touched that my big brother wanted to help me through the worst period of my life. "I can't afford Disney right now," Brian had continued. "The construction business has been slow, and Madison's been home with Emma and Tyler. But you got that settlement money from the divorce." He'd made it sound like therapy, like I'd be doing myself a favor by spending my divorce settlement on their family vacation. "Think about it," he'd push gently. "Emma's 6 now, Tyler's 4. Perfect ages for Disney magic. And you'll get to see their faces when they meet Mickey Mouse. That's the kind of joy you need in your life right now." I'd written the check that same day. $8,000 for flights, the Polynesian resort, park tickets, dining plans, everything. Because my brother convinced me that funding their dream vacation would somehow heal my broken heart. Now Madison was telling me I'd be too depressed to enjoy the trip I'd paid for. "I think Madison's right," Mom said quietly. "You've been through so much, sweetie. Maybe a quiet week at home would be better." Even my own mother was agreeing to exclude me. "The dogs do need supervision," Dad added, nodding toward Cooper and Bailey, my 2 golden retrievers who'd been my only consistent comfort through the divorce. I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The same people who'd convinced me to spend my divorce settlement on their happiness were now deciding I was too broken to participate in it. "You're absolutely right," I said, forcing a smile. "I should stay home and take care of my dogs." They had no idea what they'd just done. The drive home was a blur of rage and heartbreak. 6 months of supporting Brian's family through their financial struggles. 6 months of listening to Madison complain about never being able to afford family vacations. 6 months of Brian playing the concerned brother who just wanted to help me heal from my divorce. And this was how they repaid me. I'd been so naive, so desperate for family support during the worst time of my life, that I'd let myself be manipulated into funding their dream vacation. Then they'd decided I was too emotionally unstable to actually enjoy it with them. Cooper and Bailey greeted me at the door like I'd been gone for years instead of experiencing the most humiliating dinner of my life. At least someone was genuinely happy to see me. I poured a large glass of wine and opened my laptop. Every confirmation email was right there in my inbox, all meticulously organized by date. Brian had insisted I handle all the bookings since I was so good with travel planning, and it was my treat anyway. Disney Resort confirmation, $3,200 for the Polynesian resort, 5 nights. Flight confirmations, $2,800 for 5 round-trip tickets to Orlando park tickets, $1, $400 for 5-day park hoppers. Dining plan, $800 for table service meals. Car rental, $300 for a week-long SUV rental. Miscellaneous expenses, $500 for character meals and special experiences. $8,300 total. My entire divorce settlement from David, spent on a family that had just excluded me from participating. I took screenshots of every confirmation, then picked up my phone. "Disney reservations, this is Marcus. How can I help you today?" "Hi, Marcus. I need to cancel several reservations. The travelers will not be able to make their trip." "Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can I get the confirmation numbers?" I systematically canceled everything. The resort reservation, the dining bookings, the special character experiences I'd arranged for Emma and Tyler. Marcus processed each cancellation with professional sympathy, unaware that I was dismantling my own family's vacation plans. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Marcus asked after the final cancellation. "Actually, yes. I'd like to make some new reservations. For 1 adult and 2 dogs. An hour later, I'd upgraded my solo Disney experience beyond anything Brian's family could have imagined. The presidential suite at the Grand Floridian instead of a standard room at the Polynesian. First-class flights instead of economy. VIP tour guides instead of waiting in lines. Premium dining experiences instead of the basic meal plan. If they wanted me to stay home and take care of my dogs, I'd do exactly that. I'd take such good care of Cooper and Bailey that we'd all have the most magical vacation of our lives. Without them. I fell asleep on the couch with my laptop open to the Grand Floridian's concierge services and my dogs curled up beside me. Tomorrow, I'd start preparing for the trip of a lifetime. The trip they'd convinced me I was too broken to handle. Friday morning arrived with perfect clarity. I'd spent Thursday finalizing my upgraded Disney plans while Brian's family presumably packed for a vacation they didn't know had been canceled. My phone had been quiet all week. No thank you calls for organizing everything. No excited messages about the approaching trip. Apparently, accepting my financial generosity didn't require actual gratitude. I loaded my designer luggage into my car, along with Cooper and Bailey's luxury travel carriers. The presidential suite was pet-friendly, and my dogs deserved this vacation more than my ungrateful family did. The first-class check-in line moved efficiently. As I handed over my ID and confirmation, I wondered if Brian's family had left for the airport yet. They were probably finishing breakfast, double-checking their packing, excitedly anticipating their magical Disney vacation, the vacation I was no longer paying for. "Ms. Parker, Izzy, you've booked our premium pet travel service," the agent said with a professional smile. "Your companions will be very comfortable in the cabin with you. They're much better travel companions than some humans I know," I replied, scratching Cooper behind the ears. The first-class lounge was exactly what I needed. Complimentary breakfast, bottomless mimosas, and comfortable seating. I settled in with my dogs and checked my phone one final time before takeoff. No messages from Brian or Madison. They probably assumed I was at home crying into my wine while they embarked on their dream vacation. They were half right. I was drinking, but I was drinking champagne in a first-class lounge while heading to Disney World with my 2 favorite companions. My flight was at 10 a.m. Theirs had been scheduled for 11:30. Right about now, they were probably arriving at the airport, ready to begin their magical adventure. I grinned and ordered another mimosa. 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Brian's name flashed on the screen repeatedly, but I let every call go to voicemail. Then Madison called, also ignored. The calls kept coming with increasing frequency. Brian, Madison, Brian again, Mom, Madison again. Each declined call felt like a small victory. Finally, Brian sent a text. "Jessica, call me now. They say our flights are canceled." I took a screenshot and saved it to my phone's photo album. Documentary evidence of the moment they discovered the consequences of their choices. Another text arrived. "The airline says you canceled our tickets. That's impossible, right?" Another screenshot for my collection. "Jessica, the hotel has no record of our reservation. What's happening?" I turned my phone to silent and finished my champagne. My flight was boarding, and I had a presidential suite waiting for me in Orlando. Let the games begin. The flight to Orlando was pure peace. Cooper and Bailey charmed everyone in first class, earning extra treats from the flight attendants and compliments from fellow passengers. I spent most of the flight reading a book and deliberately not checking my phone. The luxury car service Disney had arranged met me at baggage claim with a spacious sedan equipped for pet travel. As we drove through Orlando toward Disney property, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my marriage fell apart. Complete control over my own life. My phone had been silent during the flight, but when I finally turned it back on, I found 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. The voicemails were a fascinating progression of emotions. Message 1, Brian, 11:45 a.m. "Jess, there's some kind of mistake with our reservations. Call me back immediately." Message 2, Madison, 12:08 p.m. "Jessica, the airline says our tickets were canceled by the cardholder. That has to be some kind of error because you're not even supposed to be traveling with us." Oh, Madison. Sweet, oblivious Madison. Message 3, Brian, 12:20 p.m. "They're telling us you canceled everything. Our hotel, our flights, everything. This has to be identity theft or some kind of mistake. Please call me back." Message 4, Madison, 12:35 p.m., voice shaking with fury. "I know what you did, Jessica. This is sick and twisted. We have 2 small children here who don't understand why their Disney trip is ruined. Emma keeps asking if we did something wrong. How could you do this to innocent children? Message 5. Brian, 12:47 p.m. Jess, please, whatever's happening, we can work it out. The kids are devastated. Emma's been crying for an hour asking why Mickey Mouse doesn't want to see her anymore. Please call me back. Message 6. Mom, 1:15 p.m. Jessica Rose Parker, your brother just called me in hysterics. He says you canceled their Disney trip. What in God's name is going on? That last message made me pause. Brian had called Mom. This was escalating beyond just our immediate conflict. Good. Maybe now someone would ask the right questions about how this situation had developed. The car pulled up to the Grand Floridian, and my breath caught. The Victorian elegance, the pristine gardens, the magical atmosphere. It was even more beautiful than the photos. Welcome to the Grand Floridian, Ms. Parker, the bellhop said as he helped unload my luggage and pet carriers. Your presidential suite is ready, and we have a special welcome package prepared for your companions. Cooper and Bailey immediately received royal treatment from the Disney staff, with personalized bandanas and gourmet dog treats. They were going to be spoiled beyond belief. As I settled into my suite, 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, dining room, and a balcony with direct views of Cinderella Castle, I finally felt ready to deal with my family's crisis. I called Brian back. Jessica! Brian's voice exploded through the phone before I could say hello. What the hell is happening? We're stranded at the airport with 2 crying children and no way to get to Disney. Hello, Brian, I said calmly, settling onto my suite's plush sofa, while Cooper and Bailey explored their new luxury accommodations. I understand you're having some travel difficulties. Travel difficulties? Travel difficulties? Jessica, our entire vacation has been canceled. The airline says you revoked permission for our tickets. The hotel says they have no record of our reservation. We're sitting here with suitcases and crying kids and nowhere to go. That sounds very stressful for you, I replied, taking a sip of the complimentary champagne that had been waiting in my suite. Where are you calling from? We're still at the airport. We had to call Mom to come pick us up because we can't afford last-minute flights or hotels. Emma doesn't understand why we can't go see Mickey Mouse. Tyler won't stop asking if he was bad, and that's why we can't go to Disney. The guilt trip was predictable but ineffective. That's unfortunate, Brian. Have you explained to them why the trip was canceled? I don't understand why it was canceled. You paid for everything weeks ago. I did pay for everything, I agreed. And then Madison decided I shouldn't be allowed to participate in the vacation I funded. So I decided none of us should participate. Silence. Then, Jessica, that's not... She didn't mean you couldn't go. She just thought maybe you needed more time to heal from your divorce. Really? Because what she actually said was, it's better if you don't come to Disney with us. Stay home and take care of your dogs. That sounds like a pretty clear disinvitation to me. She was trying to be considerate of your emotional state by excluding me from the trip I paid for. How exactly is that considerate, Brian? Another pause. I could hear Madison's voice in the background, shrill and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. Look, maybe we made a mistake, Brian said finally. Maybe we should have discussed it more as a family before making that decision. But canceling the entire trip? That's extreme, Jess. That's punishing the kids for something they had nothing to do with. I stood up and walked to my balcony where Cinderella Castle sparkled in the afternoon sun. You're right, Brian. The kids had nothing to do with this. But neither did I. I'm the one who'd just gone through a devastating divorce. I'm the one who needed family support. And instead of getting that support, I got manipulated into paying for your family vacation and then excluded from participating in it. We thought you needed space to grieve. I needed my family to treat me with respect and kindness, not convince me to spend my divorce settlement on their happiness and then decide I was too broken to be around. Jessica, please. We can fix this. We can rebook everything. We can all go together. With what money, Brian? I've already spent my settlement. On my own vacation. The one I'm currently enjoying in the presidential suite at the Grand Floridian. Dead silence. You're at Disney? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm at Disney. With Cooper and Bailey. Having the most magical time. And then I hung up. Saturday morning brought room service breakfast on my private balcony and a view of Magic Kingdom that people spend years saving to experience. Cooper and Bailey were already spoiled beyond recognition, having received welcome gifts from Disney staff and their own personalized feeding stations. My phone showed dozens of missed calls and texts, but I'd kept it on silent all night. This morning felt like the perfect time to document my magical solo vacation. The selfie was everything I'd hoped for. Me in the center wearing a beautiful sundress, Cooper and Bailey flanking me with their Disney bandanas, and Cinderella Castle gleaming in the background through the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows. We all looked exactly where we belonged. I posted it to Instagram with the simple caption, Sometimes the most magical vacations are the ones you plan for yourself and your best friends. The response was immediate and overwhelming. College friends, work colleagues, distant relatives, everyone wanting to know how I'd managed to score a presidential suite at Disney. But the comment that made me laugh out loud came from my cousin Rachel. Wait, isn't this the weekend of Brian's big family Disney trip? How are you posting from a suite while they're posting crying selfies from the airport? Rachel had always been the family truth teller. My phone started ringing, Mom's name on the screen. I answered. Jessica Parker, what in God's name is happening with this Disney situation? I just saw your Instagram post and I'm completely confused. Good morning, Mom. I'm having a wonderful time at Disney World with Cooper and Bailey. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Brian called me yesterday hysterical, saying you'd canceled their family vacation out of spite. Now you're posting pictures from Disney like nothing happened. I need you to explain what's really going on. I took a deep breath. This conversation was long overdue. Mom, did Brian tell you who paid for their Disney vacation? He said you all went in together on it as a family trip. That's interesting because I paid for the entire thing. Every flight, every hotel night, every park ticket. $8,000 from my divorce settlement. Silence. Brian convinced me to pay for everyone's vacation by telling me it would help me heal from my divorce. That seeing Emma and Tyler's joy would be good therapy for me. So I spent my entire settlement on their family dream vacation. Oh, honey. Then, after everything was booked and paid for, Madison decided I was too emotionally unstable to participate. She said it would be better if I stayed home and took care of my dogs. Mom and Dad agreed with her. Even you agreed that I should stay home. Jessica, we all thought it was your idea to stay home. We thought you'd realized you weren't ready for a big family trip. No, Mom. They convinced me to fund their vacation and then excluded me from it. So I canceled their portions and used the money for my own vacation instead. They're saying you ruined the children's vacation out of spite. I ruined nothing, Mom. I simply stopped paying for people who didn't want me around. If Brian and Madison wanted to take their children to Disney, they should have planned and paid for that trip themselves instead of manipulating their recently divorced relative into funding it. Mom was quiet for a long time. Jessica, I had no idea this is how it happened. Brian made it sound like you'd just snapped and canceled everything out of nowhere. Of course he did. It's easier to paint me as unstable than to admit they took advantage of me during the worst time of my life. What can I do to help fix this situation? I looked out at the castle view that had cost me my entire divorce settlement, but given me back my self-respect. Nothing, Mom. There's nothing to fix. I'm exactly where I belong. My VIP tour guide Christina met me in the Grand Floridian lobby at 9 a.m. sharp, carrying special Disney leashes for Cooper and Bailey, and looking genuinely excited about our unique adventure. Ms. Parker, I have to say, in 5 years of VIP tours, I've never had the pleasure of guiding someone with such distinguished furry companions, she said, crouching down to greet my dogs who immediately decided she was their new favorite person. They deserve the royal treatment, I said, watching Cooper and Bailey preen under the attention. They've been better family to me than most humans lately. Christina was the epitome of Disney professionalism. She asked no questions about my family situation, but somehow made it clear she understood this was a special trip that meant more than typical Disney vacation. As we headed toward our private transportation to Magic Kingdom, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Madison. I got your number from your mom. We need to talk. I showed the message to Christina. My estranged sister-in-law wants to chat. Should I be worried she'll show up and cause a scene? Christina smiled diplomatically. Disney World is a large place, and the Grand Floridian has excellent security. I think you and your companions are quite safe here. I typed back to Madison. I'm busy enjoying my Disney vacation. Perhaps we can talk when I return home. Her response was immediate. You can't hide behind luxury suites forever. What you did to those children is unforgivable. I screenshot the message and put my phone away. Some people would always try to make their problems someone else's responsibility. At Magic Kingdom, Christina worked her VIP magic. While families waited 2 hours for Space Mountain, we walked straight on. While children had meltdowns in the heat waiting for character meet and greets, Cooper and Bailey had private sessions with Mickey Mouse himself in an air-conditioned room. The photos from that experience were absolutely surreal. Me and my golden retrievers posing with Mickey, all of us looking like we belonged in some magical fairy tale where dogs could meet Disney characters. I posted the best photo with the caption, "When your family tells you to stay home with your dogs, so you bring your dogs to meet Mickey Mouse instead." The comments poured in immediately. People were fascinated by the story emerging through my posts. Solo Disney trips, luxury suites, dogs meeting characters. It was the kind of content that made people stop scrolling. But more importantly, I was having the time of my life. For the first time since my divorce, I felt genuinely happy. Not pretending to be okay, not putting on a brave face, but actually experiencing joy. Brian and Madison had tried to exclude me from happiness. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to create my own version of magic. As we headed toward our private Pirates of the Caribbean experience, my phone rang. Brian's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail and focused on the magic happening around me. Some calls could wait forever. Saturday evening brought the most exclusive dining experience Disney had to offer. Victoria and Albert's, the crown jewel of Disney restaurants, where reservations were nearly impossible to get and dinner cost more than most families spent on their entire vacation. I sat at a table overlooking the lagoon, wearing an elegant dress I'd bought specifically for this trip, with Cooper and Bailey resting peacefully at my feet on their custom Disney blankets. The 7-course meal was a work of art, each dish more exquisite than the last. As I sipped wine that cost more per glass than Brian made in a day, my phone finally stopped buzzing with calls and texts. The silence was more peaceful than any meditation retreat. Around course 5, Christina appeared at my table with a discreet smile. "Ms. Parker, I hope you don't mind the interruption. There's been an inquiry at the front desk about your whereabouts from some individuals claiming to be your family members." I nearly choked on my wine. "They're here? At Disney?" "They're not on property," Christina clarified quickly. "They called the resort asking if you were registered here. Our policy is to never confirm guest information, so they were politely informed that we couldn't provide any details." "Did they say what they wanted?" The caller identified herself as Madison Parker and said it was a family emergency that required immediate contact with you. I laughed. Actually laughed. In the middle of Victoria and Albert's. Madison Parker. She kept her maiden name when she married my brother. She's never been a Parker in her life. Christina's professional composure slipped slightly as she smiled. "I see. Well, the call has been logged and no information was provided. Thank you for letting me know. And thank you for Disney's privacy policies. Of course. Shall I arrange for additional security measures during the remainder of your stay?" I considered it, then shook my head. I think the fact that they can't afford to actually get on property is security enough. After Christina left, I pulled out my phone and found the voicemail Brian had left earlier. "Jess, please call me back. Madison drove us to Orlando. We're staying at a motel outside Disney property, and we brought the kids to try to salvage something from this weekend. Emma keeps asking why she can see the castle from the parking lot but can't go inside. Please, if you have any heart left, call me back." They'd driven to Orlando anyway, with no hotel reservations, no park tickets, no Disney dining plan. Just showed up hoping to create some kind of magical experience from nothing. The desperation was palpable, and for a moment, I felt sorry for Emma and Tyler. But then I remembered that this entire situation was the direct result of their parents' choices. Brian had manipulated me into funding their dream vacation, and Madison had excluded me from participating in it. The consequences belonged to them, not to me. I finished my wine and focused on the dessert course that had just arrived. A chocolate souffle that was quite literally a work of art. Some problems were too delicious to be interrupted by family drama. Sunday morning brought my final day at Disney and an unexpected phone call that changed everything. I was enjoying room service breakfast on my balcony when my phone rang with Mom's number. "Jessica, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Mom said without preamble. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I owe you an enormous apology." I set down my orange juice and gave her my full attention. "I talked to your father last night about the whole Disney situation. Really talked. Not just accepted Brian's version of events. And we started remembering things." "What kind of things?" "Like how eager Brian was to get you to pay for this trip. How he kept talking about what good therapy it would be for you. How he insisted you handle all the booking because you were so organized. And it was your treat anyway." I waited. "Jessica, he manipulated you. He used your divorce and your emotional vulnerability to convince you to spend your entire settlement on his family's vacation. That's not brotherly concern, that's financial manipulation." Hearing Mom say it out loud made something shift in my chest. For weeks, I'd been questioning whether I'd overreacted, whether canceling their trip had been cruel and excessive. "And then," Mom continued, "after you'd paid for everything, Madison decided you were too depressed to participate. Not because she was concerned about your well-being, but because she didn't want to deal with your emotional state during their dream vacation." "Mom, no, let me finish. You've been dealing with a divorce, living back home with us, trying to rebuild your life, and instead of supporting you, your brother took advantage of your vulnerability, and your sister-in-law excluded you from the very experience they'd convinced you to fund." I felt tears starting, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief rather than sadness. "I failed you too," Mom said quietly. "When Madison said you should stay home, I should have questioned that decision. I should have asked why the person who'd paid for everyone's vacation was suddenly being excluded from it. You thought you were supporting my healing process. I thought I was taking the path of least resistance. It's easier to agree that the sad, divorced daughter should stay home than to challenge the daughter-in-law who might cause family drama. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. What they did to you was wrong, Jessica. Deeply wrong. And I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Even though I left them stranded at an airport? Even though you refused to continue funding people who'd excluded and manipulated you, that takes courage. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. Mom's validation meant everything. Someone finally understood that this wasn't about being petty or vindictive. It was about refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. Christina arrived for our final VIP tour with a special surprise. She'd arranged for Cooper and Bailey to participate in a private photo session with multiple Disney characters. Something that had never been done before, but that Disney had approved especially for us. The photos were magical beyond words. Me and my dogs with Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, and Pluto. All of us looking like we belonged in the most exclusive Disney fairy tale ever told. As I posted the final photo of our Disney adventure, I realized something important. This trip hadn't just been about revenge or proving a point. It had been about discovering that I was strong enough to choose my own happiness. Brian and Madison had tried to make me feel broken and burdensome. Instead, they'd taught me that I deserved better treatment than I'd been accepting. Sometimes the best gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they really are. The flight home was peaceful and reflective. Cooper and Bailey slept contentedly in their first-class accommodations, while I processed the transformative weekend we'd just experienced. As we descended toward home, I felt like a completely different person than the one who'd left 3 days ago. The woman who'd boarded this plane on Friday had been wounded, uncertain, questioning her own worth. The woman heading home had been reminded of her strength, her value, and her right to demand respect from the people who claim to love her. My phone had been blissfully quiet during the flight, but when I turned it back on at the gate, I found a single text from Brian. "We need to talk when you get home. I'm waiting at your house." Sarah picked me up from the airport, practically vibrating with curiosity. "Okay, I've been following your Instagram posts and I need every single detail," she announced as we loaded my luggage. "Did they really try to track you down at Disney?" "Madison called the resort claiming to be a Parker and saying there was a family emergency," I explained, while Cooper and Bailey settled into Sarah's back seat. Disney's privacy policies saved me from whatever confrontation she had planned. And they actually drove to Orlando, anyway? Apparently they're staying at some budget motel off-property trying to create a Disney experience from the parking lot. Sarah shook her head in amazement. The audacity is truly breathtaking. So what happens now? Now I go home and face whatever conversation Brian thinks we need to have. When we pulled into my driveway, Brian's truck was indeed parked outside. He was sitting on my front porch, looking more humble and exhausted than I'd ever seen him. "Want me to stay?" Sarah asked, clearly ready to serve as backup if needed. "No, this is something we need to handle as family, but thank you." Brian stood as I approached with Cooper and Bailey, who immediately ran to greet him with typical golden retriever enthusiasm. At least someone was happy to see him. "How was Disney?" he asked quietly. "Magical," I replied honestly. "Absolutely magical. Jess, I owe you the biggest apology of my life." "Yes, you do." We went inside and I made coffee while Brian helped me get the dogs settled. The silence was heavy but not hostile. "I talked to Mom yesterday," Brian said finally. "She helped me understand some things I'd been deliberately not seeing, such as the fact that I manipulated you into paying for our vacation. I used your divorce and your emotional state to convince you to spend money you couldn't afford on a trip that was really about my family's happiness, not your healing." I handed him a coffee and sat down across from him. "What else?" "Madison was never concerned about your emotional well-being. She was annoyed by the possibility of having to deal with your sadness during our dream vacation. She wanted you to pay for it but not participate in it. And you went along with that?" "I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to my wife or admitting that we'd been taking advantage of you." Brian rubbed his face tiredly. "The worst part is I convinced myself I was helping you, that funding our family vacation would somehow make you feel needed and useful during a difficult time. Instead of actually providing emotional support, he agreed. "It was easier to take your money than to deal with your pain." We sat in silence for a moment. "The kids asked about you," Brian said finally. "Emma wanted to know why Aunt Jessica wasn't coming to Disney anymore. I didn't know how to explain that we'd asked you to pay for our vacation and then told you not to come." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt people they love and that Aunt Jessica was taking some time to feel better. That's actually a pretty honest explanation for a 6-year-old. She said she hoped you would feel better soon and that next time we should all go to Disney together." Despite everything, Ismaeled. She's a smart kid. She gets that from her aunt. We talked for 3 hours. Really talked. In a way we hadn't since we were children. Brian explained how Madison's insecurities about money had created a dynamic where they felt entitled to financial help from family members. How my divorce settlement had seemed like a solution to their constant financial stress. I explained how devastating it had been to be manipulated during the worst time of my life. How his request for vacation funding had felt like genuine brotherly care, only to discover it was really about their family's needs rather than my emotional healing. The thing that hurt the most, I told him, wasn't even Madison telling me not to come. It was realizing that you'd used my pain to get what you wanted. I know, and I'm ashamed of that. Truly ashamed. What happens with you and Madison now? Brian sighed heavily. We need counseling, individual and couples therapy. This whole situation has shown me that our relationship has some serious problems that I've been ignoring, such as the fact that she thinks it's acceptable to take advantage of family members and then exclude them when they become inconvenient, and the fact that I enabled that behavior because confrontation is uncomfortable. And financially, we're in trouble. The Orlando trip we couldn't afford, the motel room, the gas money, we put it all on credit cards. We owe 3 different relatives money from trying to fund a last-minute Disney trip. And I still haven't gotten that construction contract I was counting on. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was tempered by the knowledge that these were consequences of their own choices. Brian, I can't fix your financial problems, and I won't be the family's emergency funding source anymore. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking for the chance to rebuild our relationship based on honesty and respect instead of financial dependency. What would that look like? It would look like Madison apologizing directly to you, not through me. It would look like us paying our own way for family activities. It would look like me being a better brother who supports you emotionally instead of just seeing you as a resource. And if Madison doesn't want to apologize or change how she treats family members, then Madison and I have bigger problems than I thought. As the afternoon wore on, I realized that Brian's apology felt genuine, in a way that his previous attempts at reconciliation hadn't. He wasn't just sorry he'd been caught or sorry about the consequences. He seemed genuinely horrified by his own behavior. There's something else, Brian said as he prepared to leave. Emma asked if she could call you. She misses her Aunt Jessica, and she doesn't understand why family vacations have to involve people being left out. She can call me anytime. None of this was her fault or Tyler's fault. Thank you for everything, for the apology you deserve, for the patience you probably don't owe me, and for teaching me what self-respect looks like. As I watched Brian drive away, I felt cautiously optimistic about our future relationship. It would never be the same as before, but maybe it could be better. More honest, more equal, more respectful. Cooper and Bailey settled beside me on the couch, still wearing their Disney bandanas and looking like the most spoiled dogs in the world. What do you think, guys? I asked them. Ready for our next adventure? Cooper barked once, as if saying, absolutely. Bailey just wagged her tail and fell asleep against my leg. Perfect. We were in complete agreement. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my backyard watching Cooper and Bailey play with their new toys while planning my next solo adventure, this time to Europe. The Disney story eventually became family legend, but the lessons I learned have shaped every relationship decision since. Brian and I have slowly rebuilt our bond. It's different now, more honest with clearer boundaries, but it's genuine in a way it never was before. He and Madison did go to counseling, both together and separately. Madison eventually apologized, though it took 4 months and significant pressure from the entire extended family. The apology wasn't perfect, but it acknowledged that she'd been wrong to exclude me after I'd funded their vacation. More importantly, it included a commitment to treat family members with respect, regardless of their emotional state or financial contributions. Brian found steady work again and slowly paid back the relatives who'd loaned them money for their disastrous Orlando trip. They're still struggling financially, but they're managing their problems without expecting family members to solve them. Emma and Tyler still call me Aunt Jessica, still love their sleepovers at my house, and Cooper and Bailey are still their favorite family members. The kids have no memory of the Disney drama. To them, it's just the story of how Aunt Jessica took her dogs on the best vacation ever. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. Saw your Europe planning posts. Please tell me you're documenting this trip too. The people need inspiration. I grin and type back, solo travel isn't just for Disney. These dogs haven't seen Paris yet. The truth is that weekend taught me something invaluable about self-worth and family dynamics. You don't need anyone's permission to live your best life. You don't need to accept manipulation disguised as concern. And sometimes the people who try to exclude you from happiness are actually doing you the biggest favor possible. They're forcing you to discover how strong and capable you really are. My relationship with my parents improved dramatically after Mom recognized how Brian had manipulated the situation. Dad started asking more questions instead of just agreeing with whoever spoke loudest. They both became better allies when I needed family support. The divorce that had initially devastated me became the catalyst for learning to value myself appropriately. David's betrayal had shattered my confidence, but my family's manipulation had rebuilt it stronger than before. Brian's truck pulls into my driveway, and I see Emma and Tyler bouncing excitedly in their car seats. Sunday dinner has become a weekly tradition again, but now it's based on mutual respect rather than guilt and financial obligation. "Aunt Jessica!" Emma shouts as she runs toward me. "Did Cooper and Bailey miss us?" "More than you can imagine," I tell her, watching my dogs practically tackle both kids with golden retriever enthusiasm. Brian walks over carrying a bottle of wine and looking genuinely relaxed for the first time in years. "How was your week?" he asks. "Good. Busy planning my European adventure. How was yours?" "Better. Madison got promoted at her new job, and that construction contract I've been chasing finally came through. We're actually ahead on bills for the first time in months." "That's wonderful, Brian. Really." As we head inside for dinner, I catch my reflection in the window. I look happy, confident, like someone who knows her worth and isn't afraid to demand appropriate treatment. The woman who'd been excluded from a family vacation she funded would barely recognize the woman I've become. That woman would have apologized for causing trouble and quietly accepted whatever scraps of affection she was offered. This woman books presidential suites, brings her dogs on luxury vacations, and knows that self-respect isn't selfish. It's necessary. Cooper barks at a squirrel in the distance, and Bailey joins in with typical golden retriever drama. Tyler giggles and starts barking too, which makes Emma laugh until she can barely breathe. This is what family should look like. Joy, respect, unconditional love, and the understanding that everyone deserves to be valued. Sometimes the most important lesson you can learn is that you're worth more than you've been accepting. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to choose happiness. The most magical adventures often begin when people try to leave you behind. And always, always trust your instincts about who deserves your generosity. The people who truly love you will never ask you to pay for acceptance.